Blood covered the stone courtyard of Alder Citadel on the night the empire broke apart. A poor kitchen maid, who had been beaten and hurt, let out a very old and scary power. This power was so strong that our undefeated Alpha King fell to his knees. This is not just an old story people tell for fun. This is the real, hidden history of a girl named Genevieve Sinclair. To understand how big and important what happened at Alder Citadel really was, you first need to know about the harsh rules of the wolf noble families in the late 1100s. King Alaric Montgomery was not just a king. He was the top of the top. He had taken over the northern lands by the time he was 25 winters old. He killed the wild wolf packs that caused trouble at the borders. He made all the noble families obey his iron will. He was a cruel, never-defeated alpha wolf. People knew him for his scary self-control and his stare. With just one look, he could make a weaker wolf show their throat to say "you win," without saying a single word. Into this place full of top predators walked Genevieve Sinclair. Genevieve did not look like someone who would change history. She was hired to be a kitchen maid, the lowest servant job in the royal kitchen. Her hands were always black with soot from the fires. Her dresses were made of rough wool. She kept her dark hair hidden under a dirty linen cap. But her most important disguise was one that human eyes could not see. Every morning, before the sun came up over the sharp peaks of the Dragontooth Mountains, Genevieve rubbed a paste made of fireplace ash, dried mint, and crushed wolfsbane onto her wrists and neck. The paste burned her skin and left small red marks. It hid her smell. Genevieve was not a human. She was not a common Omega wolf either. She was the last living child of the Ethelgard family, a family of ancient alphas that everyone thought had been killed off 300 years ago. Her mother had died from a long sickness in a faraway village. Before she died, she made Genevieve swear to hide. "If they smell what you really are, Genevieve," her mother had said, her hands shaking, "the males will try to break you to take your power for babies. The kings will kill you to protect their thrones." So Genevieve kept her head down. She scrubbed the big iron pots until her knuckles bled. She let the head cook Martha yell at her. She let the higher-ranked servants kick her. She watched the mean politics of the royal court from the shadows. She learned the names of the important people. There was Lord Frederick Hayes, the tricky master of money. There was Lady Beatrice Carmichael, the proud and mean daughter of the Southern Duke. She was trying very hard to become King Alaric's wife. And there was Commander Gideon, the king's most loyal friend. The thing that started the kingdom's big change was the yearly blood moon feast. Alder Citadel was full of visiting important people, pack leaders, and noble lords. The kitchen was in total panic. When one of the serving girls passed out from being too tired, head cook Martha pushed a heavy silver tray full of cooked deer meat and spiced wine into Genevieve's hands. "Take this to the high table," Martha whispered, wiping sweat from her face. "Keep your eyes on the floor. Do not talk unless someone talks to you. And for the love of the goddess, do not spill anything." Genevieve's heart pounded hard against her ribs. The big dining hall was a nightmare for a wolf who was trying to hide her nature. The air was thick with the smell of cooked meat, strong perfumes, and the strong, angry smells of hundreds of powerful wolves showing off for the king. She walked through the crowded hall, using her practice of being invisible. She got close to the high table, where King Alaric sat on a chair, made from black stone and special wood. Even from 10 steps away, his presence was too much to handle. His energy felt like a heavy weight. He smelled like frost, dark pine trees, and blood that had been spilled. Lady Beatrice sat on his right side, wearing a dress made of golden thread. She laughed loudly and kept touching the king's broad shoulder. The king looked very bored. His cold, light blue eyes looked around the room like a hunter looking for prey. Genevieve reached the table and started to carefully put down the silver plates. She was so focused on keeping her hands still that she did not see Lord Hayes, who was drunk on dark beer, push his chair back hard. The heavy wooden leg of the chair slammed into Genevieve's hip. The pain was sharp, but the surprise was even worse. Genevieve tripped. The silver tray fell from her hands and crashed onto the stone floor with a loud noise. A cup of spiced wine broke, and splashed red liquid all over the bottom of Lady Beatrice's golden dress. Silence filled the great hall. The music stopped. Hundreds of hungry wolf eyes snapped to the servant girl kneeling in the spilled wine. "You clumsy, terrible creature," Lady Beatrice screamed, jumping to her feet. She hit Genevieve across the face with the back of her hand. The big ruby ring on Beatrice's finger cut Genevieve's cheek open. For a tiny part of a second, the pain and the sudden rush of fear made Genevieve lose her tight control. The wolf's bane paste on her neck, mixed with the sweat from the hot kitchen, got thinner. Through the smell of her own blood, a tiny, tiny thread of her true smell escaped. It did not smell like a maid. It did not smell like an omega wolf. It smelled like a thunderstorm rolling over old, frozen rivers of ice. It smelled like pure, full strength. King Alaric, who had been watching the scene with cold, empty feelings, suddenly went completely still. His head snapped toward Genevieve. His light blue eyes got bigger until they were almost all black. The wine cup in his own hand broke under the sudden tight squeeze of his fingers, sending glass pieces and wine across the table. A low, scary rumble came from Alaric's chest. It was a sound so deep and so possessive that several weaker wolves in the front row started to cry softly and show their necks without thinking. Genevieve felt the heavy weight of the king's attention lock onto her. Cold, sharp fear filled her blood. She threw herself flat on the floor, quickly pulling her walls back up and pushing her power deep down into the darkest part of her soul. "Forgive me, my lord, my lady," Genevieve cried out, making her voice shake like a scared human's. "I'm so sorry." Alaric stood up slowly. He was much taller than the table. He breathed in deeply, his chest getting bigger, smelling the air. But Genevieve had already closed everything off. Only the metal taste of blood and the sour smell of spilled wine remained. Page 4. Beatrice raised her hand to hit Genevieve again, but a loud, mean snarl from the king froze her in place. "Get her out of my sight," Alaric ordered. His voice was rough. His eyes were still searching Genevieve's shaking, dirty body. Commander Gideon ran forward, grabbed Genevieve by the back of her dress, and pulled her out of the great hall. As the heavy wooden door swung shut behind her, Genevieve caught one last look at King Alaric. He was no longer looking at the crowd. He was staring at the puddle of wine where she had just been. His chest was moving up and down fast. On his normally empty face was a look of deep, confused surprise. Genevieve survived the night by hiding in the darkest corner of the laundry basement. She shook like a leaf as her inner wolf paced around like a trapped wild animal. She had slipped. The king had smelled her. She needed to run away from Alder Citadel before sunrise, before the king's trackers could figure out the strange smell. But Lady Beatrice Carmichael was not the kind of woman who let a public insult go without punishment. Beatrice had seen the way the king looked at the servant girl. She did not understand the smell. Beatrice was a high-born beta wolf. She could not sense the old magic of true alphas. But she understood jealousy. She understood that for 3 seconds, Alaric Montgomery had looked at a dirty maid with more feeling than he had ever looked at her. Right before sunrise, as Genevieve was tying up a small bag of clothes to run away, the basement doors were kicked open. 6 armed guards, wearing the gold symbol of House Carmichael, rushed into the room. "Check her bed," the guard captain said. They ripped open the straw bed that Genevieve slept on. From the cheap hay, a heavy velvet bag fell out. It hit the stone floor and spilled a bunch of shiny diamonds and a heavy gold necklace with the royal symbol on it. Genevieve's blood turned cold. It was a trick, a fake crime. "Thief," the captain said with a mean smile, grabbing her by the hair. "Lady Beatrice thought you were more than just clumsy. The punishment for stealing from the royal safe is the whip. Bring her to the courtyard." They dragged her through the winding stone hallways of the citadel. The morning air was very cold. In the middle courtyard, a big wooden post stood. It was dark from years of blood. Word had spread fast. Servants, guards, and visiting nobles gathered on the balconies and around the edges of the courtyard to watch the punishment. Lady Beatrice stood on the lower balcony, wrapped in a warm fur coat. A mean smile was on her lips. She wanted to break the girl. She wanted to erase the memory of the king's intense stare. Genevieve was tied to the post. Her rough dress was torn down the back, so her skin was bare to the freezing wind. The executioner, a big scarred man named Braden, unrolled a heavy leather whip with pieces of iron tied to the end. 30 lashes, Lady Beatrice called out, her voice echoing off the stone walls, for stealing and treason against the crown. Genevieve closed her eyes. Hold it in, she told her wolf. Let them hurt you. If you heal too fast, if you show your strength, they will know. Survive. The first lash fell. It cracked like thunder, cutting through her skin and deep into the muscle of her back. Genevieve screamed, a human scream of pain. Blood came out right away, dripping down the wooden post. Hold it in, she said inside her head. The second lash. The third. The iron pieces tore her flesh into strips. By the 10th lash, her vision was full of black spots. Her breathing was rough and shallow. But with every strike of the whip, the physical pain was breaking down her mental walls. The heavy iron cage she had built around her soul for 20 years was cracking under the hurt. Her inner wolf, an old, proud white wolf, was howling in anger. We are Ethelgard, the wolf roared in her mind. We do not bleed for weaker animals. Hit her harder, Beatrice screamed from the balcony. She was annoyed that the girl had stopped screaming and was only taking the blows with small, shaking breaths. Braden stepped back, held the whip with both hands, and got ready for a damaging strike. The 15th lash hit her spine. Something inside Genevieve broke. It was not a bone. It was the old lock on her family's power. The explosion of power was not just a word. It was a real physical wave of force and spirit pressure. As the whip hit her, a blinding flash of silver light burst out of Genevieve's body. The leather whip turned to dust in Braden's hands, gone in a tiny part of a second. The big man was picked up by an invisible wall of power and thrown 40 feet across the courtyard. He hit a stone pillar with a sick, crushing sound. The heavy iron chains tying Genevieve's wrists broke like cheap glass. She did not fall. She stood up. The air in the courtyard got 20 degrees colder in an instant. The stone under Genevieve's bare feet started to crack. Big cracks spread out in all directions. And then the smell hit. It was no longer a tiny thread. It was a wave. The huge power of a very old alpha wolf. The smell of lightning, frozen winter roses, and total, unchallenged strength filled the courtyard. It was a power so heavy that the air became hard to breathe. Up on the balconies, chaos broke out, but it was not a panic of running away. It was a panic of the body. Every wolf in the area, from the lowest servant to the highborn visiting lords, felt their knees buckle. The force forced their inner wolves into total surrender. Lord Hayes fell down, gasping for air. Guards dropped their weapons and fell to the stone floor, showing their throats and crying in fear. Even Lady Beatrice, a high-ranking beta wolf, was forced flat onto her stomach. She was crying without control as the terror of Genevieve's power crushed her pride into dust. Genevieve stood in the middle of the courtyard. Her back was a bloody mess. But her eyes were glowing a bright, scary silver. At that same moment, the heavy oak doors of the king's rooms burst open. King Alaric Montgomery ran onto the balcony. He had been half-dressed, woken up by the sudden change in the air. He held the stone railing, his eyes locking onto the bleeding girl in the courtyard. For the first time in his 25 years of life, the undefeated Alpha King felt something new. He felt the scary and exciting weight of a power greater than his own. His inner wolf did not just see a mate. It saw a ruler. It saw the Ethelgard blood. True strength is not just about winning fights. Genevieve won because she was kind, brave, and fair. She did not kill the defeated soldiers. She gave them a second chance. That is what makes a true leader. Remember, power without kindness is just bullying. If you enjoyed this story, think about what you learned. Never judge by looks. Be brave even when scared, and always be fair to those who have less power than you. Thank you so much for watching this story. Please like this video, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and kindly subscribe to the channel. We post new videos like this every day. Thank you, and see you on the next video.